In Hamburg, a fiercely devoted wife and mother named Katja lives a quiet, ordinary life with her Kurdish husband Nuri, a reformed man who long ago left the drug trade behind to run a small tax office, and their bright-eyed young son Rocco, a little boy who is the entire center of their world. Theirs is the kind of life built carefully on second chances, on the steady promise that the past can be outrun if you love hard enough and stay honest long enough. She has no idea this is the last ordinary morning her family will ever share. One afternoon, Katja drops Rocco off at Nuri's office so she can meet her best friend for breakfast, takes the car keys her husband hands her, and promises she will come back to pick them both up later. As she steps out of the building, she notices a young woman leaving a brand new bicycle unlocked on the street, and out of pure habit, she warns the stranger to lock it before someone steals it. The woman casually replies that she won't be long and walks away. Katja thinks nothing of it. She drives off, picks up her friend, and spends the day laughing and catching up, completely unaware that the woman with the brand new bicycle has just placed a nail bomb at her husband's front door. Later that evening, when Katja returns to collect Nuri and Rocco, she finds the entire street cordoned off. The building she left only hours earlier reduced to a crime scene crawling with officers. She runs toward the chaos screaming for her family, calling their names until her voice gives out. When the officers gently tell her that the two victims of the blast are a man and a young boy, Katja collapses onto the pavement, screaming in raw, animal agony, the kind of grief that does not bend or soften, the kind that simply ends a person. The police bring Katja back to her apartment to collect her husband's and son's toothbrushes for DNA testing, and she moves through her own home like a ghost trapped inside a nightmare she cannot wake from. Her parents arrive. Nuri's parents arrive. They hold her and they wait. When the DNA results come back, they confirm what every cell of her body already knew. The investigator begins his questions almost immediately, asking whether Nuri was still involved with anyone dangerous, pointing out that because the bomb was placed directly in front of his office, Nuri himself was clearly the intended target. What is a grieving woman supposed to remember in the worst hour of her life? Somewhere through the fog, Katja suddenly recalls the young woman with the brand new bicycle and tells the investigator about her. He asks her to sit with a sketch artist and draw the stranger's face. And when she begs, just once, to see her husband and her son one last time, the investigator quietly tells her that it is impossible the blast tore the bodies apart, and there is simply nothing left to show her. That night, her friend climbs into the bed beside her and holds her like a child while she sleeps. By morning, the story is already on the news, but it is not the story Katja knows to be true. The media digs up Nuri's old criminal record and spins the bombing as a drug cartel hit, an Eastern European gang revenge attack, anything but what it actually was. Even Katja's own mother starts to crack under the weight of the headlines, suggesting Nuri must have been hiding something, that he must have dragged his family into something terrible. Katja defends him with a ferocity that frightens her, but the seed of doubt has already been planted, and the world is already moving on without her. Desperate for the truth, Katja goes to see Danilo, Nuri's oldest friend and the family's lawyer, and asks him point blank if her husband was secretly back in the drug life. Danilo looks her in the eye and tells her Nuri would never, ever risk his family that way. When he mentions the police's Eastern European gang theory, Katja shakes her head and tells him quietly that the woman she saw was German, that the people who killed her husband and son were violent racists, that they murdered Nuri for one reason only because he was Kurdish. Before she leaves, she asks Danilo for something, anything, that will help her stop feeling for a few hours, and he reluctantly hands her a small bag of drugs a client had left behind. When Katja gets home, Nuri's parents are waiting to ask if they can take their son and grandson home to Turkey for burial. She excuses herself, locks her bedroom door, and uses the drugs Danilo gave her to drown the unbearable. Then she walks back out and tells her in-laws, with the brittle authority of a woman who has nothing left to lose, that her husband and her son will be buried right here in Germany. Days later, at the funeral, 2 coffins are lowered into German soil. A few days afterward, the police arrive at her apartment with a search warrant, find the bag of drugs she has hidden, and use it against her. They drag her to the station and lean on her hard, pushing the theory that Nuri must have been dealing again. Katja swears that the racist extremists killed her family, but the detective refuses to believe her, hammering on how she and Nuri could afford their apartment, mocking her when she tells him that Nuri's father owns land back home and sells it piece by piece. When he sneers and asks what exactly was planted on that land, Katja snaps that he planted houses and walks out of the interrogation room knowing the system she was raised to trust has already chosen its convenient story. she returns home and erupts at her mother, who still cannot let go of the suspicion that Nuri must have been guilty. The next day, Katja drags herself back to Nuri's destroyed office, sees the blood still staining the walls, and slides down to the floor in a grief so complete it has its own gravity. She tells her mother to leave her alone for 2 days. And inside that silence, Katja begins to think seriously about following her husband and her son into the dark. But just in time, a message arrives from Danilo. The police have arrested a young extremist couple, Andre and his wife, for the bombing. Katja was right all along. She pulls herself back from the edge, sits in the dark watching old videos of her little boy laughing, and waits for the trial to begin. The first day of court, Katja sits face to face with the 2 strangers who took everything from her. The defense attorney immediately tries to have her removed from the room, claiming she is just a witness, but Danilo and the judge refuse. The trial begins, and Danilo quietly reminds her that this couple has a long history of targeting immigrants in exactly the same way, and that justice, this time, has every reason to land where it belongs. In a later session, the forensic medical examiner takes the stand and begins describing clinically, slowly, in unsparing detail, the injuries that killed Rocco. Something inside Katja simply breaks. She leaps from her seat, lunges across the courtroom toward the female defendant, and screams that she is going to kill her. Security drags her out. The judge, with as much gentleness as the law allows, warns her that one more outburst and she will be banned from the courtroom for the rest of the trial. What is a mother supposed to do when she is asked to sit silently and listen to the medical breakdown of her 4-year-old son's body? Then comes the testimony that should have ended everything. Andre's own father takes the stand and openly disowns his son's extremist beliefs. He tells the court that he once let himself into Andre's garage and found nails, cement, and chemical fertilizer, the exact materials used to make the bomb that killed Nuri and Rocco. The defense attorney scrambles to discredit him, asking how he got inside without a key, and the father calmly explains that Andre always hid the spare key under a large stone outside. When the defense tries to suggest someone else could have used that key to frame Andre, the father shakes his head and says no, nobody else ever went in there. Before stepping down, he turns to Katja and tells her quietly how deeply sorry he is. Soon after, Katja's best friend visits her with a newborn baby in her arm. When the infant begins to stir, Katja watches her friend cradle her child and feels something carved through her all over again. A fresh wound opening on top of an older one that will never close. In the next session, a forensics expert confirms that the bomb residue from the explosion site is a perfect chemical match for the materials in Andre's garage, but then notes that they also recovered a single unidentified fingerprint at the scene. The defense pounces on it, arguing that because the garage key was left under a common stone, literally anyone could have walked in, taken Andre's supplies, and framed him. And then they produce their surprise alibi witness, a Greek hotel owner who swears with documents that the couple was vacationing at his resort the day of the bombing. Katja's stomach drops, but Danilo is ready. He pulls up a photograph of the same hotel owner proudly holding a Golden Dawn flag, symbol of one of Europe's most violent racist movements, and reveals that Andre once liked the man's extremist photo online years earlier. The witness's credibility shatters in front of the entire courtroom. That night, Danilo warns Katja that the defense, desperate, is going to weaponize the bag of drugs the police found in her apartment. The next day, the defense attorney does exactly that, attacking her testimony, calling her an addict, claiming she has been hallucinating the timeline, accusing her dead husband of being a major drug lord. Katja fires back, defending Nuri as a man who cleaned up his entire life the moment she told him she was pregnant. Danilo blocks the drug test and tries to drag the court back to the bomb residue, the matching chemistry, the fingerprint that nobody has explained, but the defense's smear has already done its quiet work. And then, the day of the verdict. To Katja's absolute horror, the judge acquits the couple. Innocent, free, compensated by the state for the time they spent in custody. The court rules that the materials in the garage could be found in any normal household, that the Greek alibi is technically legal, that there is not enough definitive proof. Katja sits in that courtroom and watches the people who murdered her husband and son walk back out into the world. And somewhere inside her, something quietly, finally, gives up on the law. A lifetime of believing in the system. One verdict was all it took to undo it. With her family gone and justice denied, Katja makes a decision. She tracks the Greek hotel owner all the way to his resort in Greece and stakes out the place, waiting. When she sees him drive away, she walks straight up to the young woman at the front desk and shows her a photograph of Andre and his wife, asking if she recognizes them. The receptionist freezes, denies it, and the moment Katja turns to leave, picks up the phone. Realizing the call is meant to stall her until the owner returns, Katja walks out fast and disappears.
Stay here, you fucking...
Later, while buying supplies in town, she spots the hotel owner driving past, slips into her car, and tails him deep into the Greek countryside. Far from anywhere, he parks and gets out, and Katja watches from a distance as he meets in secret with Andre and his wife. She cannot understand their language, but she watches him hand them something for protection before driving away. After he leaves, she creeps closer and overhears Andre telling his wife that Katja is hunting them, that she is still looking for evidence that can break their alibi. His wife looks terrified, and Katja, who once believed in police reports and courtrooms and judges in black robes, decides that if the law cannot finish this, she will. She buys the same chemicals her husband's killers used. She strips the electronics out of Rocco's toy car to wire a detonator. Alone in a rented room by the sea with her son's broken plaything on the floor beside her, she builds a nail bomb almost identical to the one that took her family. When it is finished, she drives out to the remote beach where the couple has parked their RV, waits until they step outside, runs over, and hides the backpack underneath the vehicle. She retreats with the detonator in her hand and waits for them to come back so she can press the button. But at the last possible second, she hesitates. Something deep in her, some final unbroken piece of the woman she used to be, refuses. She runs back, retrieves the backpack, and returns to her room to think. Later, while she is out, her phone rings. It is Danilo, frantic, telling her they are appealing the verdict and she needs to come home immediately for an interview. Katja tells him, very quietly, that her perspective has completely changed. When he begs her not to lose hope, she answers that there is no real evidence left that will change anything, and hangs up on the only friend she has left. That night, she stays awake until dawn, watching old home videos of Nuri and Rocco, watching her husband smile at the camera, watching her little boy laugh at something that no longer exists. And somewhere inside that long, silent night, the last of her hesitation burns away. The next morning, Katja drives back to the beach. The RV is there. Andre and his wife are inside. This time, she does not hide the bomb under the vehicle. She slips the backpack onto her own shoulders, walks calmly across the sand, opens the door of the RV, steps inside, and detonates it, taking the two people who murdered her husband and son with her. Some justice, when the law walks away from it, can only be carried out by the one person who has nothing left to lose. And some mothers, when their entire world is torn away from them, become the final verdict the courtroom refused to deliver.